Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Unlocking Maximum Value, Strategic Steps to Enhance Your Aesthetic Practice's Worth. My name is Rachel Lemieux and I manage the corporate marketing for MyAdvice, and I'll be moderating today's event. Our presenters today are Michael Olson, Senior Practice Growth Consultant at MyAdvice, and Josh Swearingen, Director at Tusk. Josh has over 15 years of leadership experience in the healthcare industry, most recently serving as the CEO for Vesper Alliance. Josh is also the co-founder of Reverse Aesthetics, an anti-aging practice in Columbus, Ohio. Michael has been helping cash-based practices grow since 2018. Starting his career as a laser rep, he's been in and out of hundreds of aesthetic offices in person, and he understands the flow and day-to-day operations of successful practices, as well as what a growth-oriented online presence can do to drive higher quality patients into your chairs, which is what we're all looking for, right? Some housekeeping tips before we jump in. We'll save all the questions for the end. Just submit them in the chat or the Q&A section. I'll monitor everything, but it just kind of seems to flow best when we save those for the end. And then I'll also be sending a copy of the recording later today, just in case you miss anything or want to share it with a coworker who couldn't be here. And now I'll turn it over to Josh to start the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it. I am taking bets on the number of mess ups I have during this presentation since it's live, so I'll have some fun with it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'll give you a little bit more information about my background, and then we'll get moving here. So give me 1 second. There we go. And I think we should be good to go there. So again, my name is Josh. I'm with Tusk Practice Sales. We are an M&A, mergers and acquisitions advisory firm situated squarely in the healthcare space. We work with provider owners all over the country and help them to maximize the value of their business when they're looking at transitioning either out of ownership or just making their day-to-day lives a little bit easier moving forward. So prior to coming to Tusk, I have about a 20-year run in healthcare. I've run a couple of organizations. I've sold a couple of larger organizations off to private equity-backed group practices. I've worked as a buyer for a large private equity-backed organization. And then in my spare time, I own and help operate Reverse Aesthetics, which is a medical aesthetics and anti-aging clinic in Columbus, Ohio. So I like to keep busy. So I think when, this is not a I think when discussing kind of healthcare consolidation and private equity that is entering the space, and then also what your exit value could look like and things that you can do to maximize that value, it's important to kind of step back and get a little bit of a history lesson just so you understand where we are in this consolidation phase and how it relates to other industries that have consolidated prior to us. So right now, if you look at the medical aesthetics space, and that's inclusive of dermatology and plastic surgery and med spa, we're roughly in the 3 to 5% consolidated range. What this means is that 3% or 3 out of every 100 of your med spas are owned by either a larger corporation or an entity that has some sort of financial backing by private equity. If you compare that to dentistry, dentistry is roughly 30 to 35% consolidated. They're around about 10, 15, maybe 15, 20 years ahead of where the medical aesthetics space is. And the interesting thing about that is that all of these consolidations start in largely the same way, by private equity identifying a really, really interesting market segment and determining that there is a reasonable runway ahead of it. And these are usually industries that are largely fragmented by individual practice owners. So you don't have, an organization that owns 30 or 40 or 50 locations. You have one provider who owns one location with a couple of other providers as employees or 1099ers, and then a couple of front desk people. And that's really how a lot of this starts. So private equity steps in, provides the capital, and starts pooling resources and bringing practices together. And through economies of scale is able to help them operate more efficiently. And that's ultimately how they make money in the short term. So dentistry is about 10, 15 years ahead of medical aesthetics. And then if you move over to the next segment, if we look at medical consolidation, it's almost entirely consolidated at around 85 to 90, 95% consolidation. And that consolidation started with these large group practices, but has continued and is now largely consolidated underneath either hospital systems or educational facilities like universities. So you have a few private practitioners out there that usually run these smaller boutique practices in the medical space. But for the most part, all of that consolidation has occurred underneath these large entities. And ultimately, dental consolidation will head in that direction as well. And medical aesthetics, although 20 to 30 years behind, will eventually get to that space. And the one unifying factor between all of these are, and there's your little timeline there, didn't realize that was going to pop up. One unifying factor behind all of these are the capital that's utilized to handle this consolidation. And it's no secret that the medical aesthetic space is growing by leaps and bounds. We have estimates of roughly 9% annual compound growth rate over the next 7 to 10 years, and many estimates have that it being significantly higher than that. We have a marketplace right now that is roughly in the $19 billion range just for medical spas alone, and that's projected to almost triple over the next 5 to 10 years. So with that in mind, these private equity groups are looking at this growth opportunity and the fact that it's such a fragmented market, and their belief is that they can help consolidate the market and jump on board and participate in a lot of that growth. And that's why you hear so many conversations about private equity entering the space, venture capital funds entering the space. They're looking at provider-based businesses that they believe that they can help to run a little bit more efficiently and make a profit off of as well at the same time. So when we talk about representation, which is what I do, we are, I think the easiest way to think about it is we're kind of real estate agents for your business. Just so you know, these business transactions are far more complex than a traditional real estate transaction, but there are a lot of reasons why you need help when you're considering going to market or looking at selling your business or maybe transitioning to the next stage of your career and your life. And not the least of which are the number of potential buyers that are out there. We've seen a tenfold increase in buyers over the last 3 to 4 years within the medical aesthetic space. And those range from small private equity firms who have a lot of experience within healthcare to small private equity firms who have no experience in healthcare. You have managed service organizations or medical services organizations that are existing large platforms that have 30 or 40 or 50 locations underneath their belt and are continuing to add locations. You have other doctors in private doctor-to-doctor transactions. And quite frankly, that's how most of these transactions occurred throughout the last 10, 15, 20 years. You got somewhat tired of working, or you had the money that you needed, or you didn't enjoy owning the business that you own, and you would find another doctor or another provider that could step in and take over that business, and they'd write you a check, and you'd either move on or you'd remain in the business as an employee. That is no longer the dominant form of practice transition. It is become largely centered around these private equity firms and these managed services organizations or medical services organizations. And then you have overseas buyers. And overseas buyers can take on a lot of different shapes and forms, but you have a robust US market in the medical aesthetic space. And overseas buyers have taken notice and realized that they can park some capital over here, and it's a very, very safe investment. So there's a lot of complexity and a lot of varying buyers, and all of the offers that are received are going to be reflective of that buyer and very unique. It's important to understand that there is very likely going to be a lot of competition for your business. And this is, one of the reasons that we're talking about maximizing your exit value is we've got a lot of buyers that are out in the space right now that are looking for businesses to buy. So I'm sure that you've received, these solicitations in the mail, or someone may have called you, someone may have sent you a mailer, or maybe you talked to somebody at a trade show that would love to step in and buy your business. Well, if you've met with them, that's absolutely fantastic. And I hope that you've learned a lot during those meetings. But that also means that there's probably 5 or 10 other prospective buyers out there that are also interested. And having an intermediary that can run a competitive process and ensure that not only you get the most or the best value for your business, you also find the right partner is critical. And finding the right fit for the next stage of your career is a huge consideration as you're looking at potential advisors, as you're looking for potential exit strategies. You want to know exactly after the check's written and the closing occurs, and or the day after closing, what are your responsibilities? And understanding what those expectations are from the buyers is critically important, and it's very different based on which buyer you ultimately decide to go with. Oops, there we go. And then finally, the analytics process and the quality of earnings process are very time intensive, and they require a high degree of financial acumen. And I think it's important to understand that in a traditional doctor-to-doctor transaction, you have two very like-minded individuals who are going to look at your business very similarly and very likely have somewhat similar financial backgrounds. When you're dealing with a private equity firm, there's a significant gap in knowledge base on the financial side. And private equity-backed organizations will certainly utilize that to their benefit. And it's important that you have someone defending you throughout the process to ensure that the offer that it was provided sticks up through quality of earnings and the closing process. The meat of what we want to talk about today, and then I'll kick it over to Michael here, and then we can go to questions and answers. So 5 factors that can dramatically impact your exit value. And there are a lot of different ways to look at this. So I've kind of boiled it down to just 5 very, very simple things that should be applicable to just about anybody who is watching right now and working through this with us. First one is aesthetic and technological updates. And this doesn't mean that you have to have the most aesthetically pleasing or the most updated business. It doesn't mean you need to go out and spend several $100,000s in getting all the latest equipment. It just means that as a buyer in the space, you want to make sure that there's some longevity tied into that business. Is the business going to be able to function properly for the next 3 to 5 years? Because that's what they're banking on. They're banking on that business being able to maintain itself over 3 to 5 years. So if there are significant technological updates that need to be made, or just reasonable technological updates that need to be made, and also on the aesthetic side, even a fresh coat of paint to make the business look attractive and welcoming and warm for the prospective customer. Those are some things that you need to consider as you're looking at going to market, because most of these buyers are going to be looking at your business from the consumer's perspective. How attractive is your business to walk in through the front door, and can I receive the services that I need to receive here? So ensuring that you're at least on par with your local market is important. Your future work commitment is a huge consideration. In a doctor-to-doctor transaction, and this is where some of the differences lie. In general, a doctor a provider may be coming in to acquire your business, and they may need you to move on and go elsewhere or retire, because they're dependent upon your production and your patient base to pay for the loan they take out on your business, to pay their salary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, with a private equity-backed organization, that isn't the case. They're looking at they're looking at maintaining the safest possible outcome and environment for their investment. So the best possible thing for them is for the previous owner operator to remain on and continue serving patients and continue taking care of the team. And that doesn't mean that they won't relieve you of some of the management responsibilities, but when you're negotiating with a private equity group, they're going to want a minimum commitment of 3 to 5 years post-close of work from you. They want to make sure that business operates largely the same post-close as it did pre-close. So as you step back and you start thinking about exit value, if you want to be retired next year, you're dramatically impacting the value of your business, because you're essentially telling the buyer, I'm going to stick around for 8 to 12 months and then I'm gone. And they're now stuck with an asset that they have to find another provider for. So it decreases the value of that. So as you think through some of these things, make sure you're planning well enough in advance so that you can maximize the value of the business. Continuity of revenue and profitability is critically important, ensuring that you're bringing in new patients, that you're replacing any patients that move away or leave, or whatever the reasoning may be. When we look at revenue graphs for the practices that we work with, we want to make sure that they're, even if it's slowly, kind of going up and to the right. So we want to see a little bit of a growth curve within the business, and even if it looks practically flat, if you have any sort of decline in the business, there needs to be a story around that, and we need to understand why the business has declined, because a prospective investor is going to wonder why the business is either hemorrhaging patients or there are issues there. So making sure that the business is healthy and there's continuity of revenue and profitability is critically important. Retention loyalty is a big consideration for a lot of these buyers. They love membership plans. They love, I mean, the nature of medical aesthetics, you have patients that come back with some degree of regularity, whether it's for, Botox and fillers or additional aesthetic procedures, both invasive and non-invasive. And ensuring that you have some stickiness with that patient base is really, really important. And it helps the investors see that, yeah, these patients are tied in, they're on the point system, they're on this membership plan, they're doing this and this and this. Like, it's not easy for these patients to really just walk away from their membership plan with this business. So retention and loyalty is a big consideration, and it's viewed very favorably by most of the buying organizations. And then market demographics. This doesn't mean that you have to have the most beautiful building in the most beautiful, fastest growing area of town, but that certainly helps. Having some degree of visibility and good signage and a good web presence and things of that nature are all really critical components of a healthy business. And understanding that you're trying to appeal to the consumer and be in a position that's easy to get to and easy to do business with and easy to come back and get repeat treatments are all a part of the consideration from the buyer's perspective. So I think those are just critically important factors. And obviously there are a lot of other ones, and happy to take questions on it at the end, but those are just 5 points that I think are worth looking at as you begin to evaluate whether you're ready to go to sell your business and transition on, or if you'd like to continue working on the business for a time period to come. So, and then as I sort of sign off here, I just want to offer all the listeners and viewers of this a free practice evaluation. Tusk Practice Sales does this, free, no charge to anybody that's interested. We'll take basically a cursory look at some of your financial numbers and a couple of practice management reports. And we'll put together a evaluation based on both your business and the market that you reside within to give you an idea of what we believe your business is going to be worth in the market. And that should arm you with enough information to either decide that you'd like to sell at some point in the near future, or potentially put some more marketing dollars into growing the business a little bit because the numbers don't match with what you need, or going back to your financial advisor and figuring out, all right, what exactly is our plan? If this is what my practice is worth today, does this allow me to retire and do the things that I wanted to do, or do I need to continue working on it? So that's free service. You're welcome to reach out to me. If you're interested in kind of the conversation we had at the front end about how consolidation has progressed through industries, you can go to tuskpracticesales.com. You can request that article. I wrote a piece on it. It's a couple pages long. It's a really easy read, but it really walks through exactly where we are in the consolidatory stage, I think that's the right word, and what we can expect as things progress based on previous industries that have consolidated before that. So I'm going to step aside. I really appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand this off to Michael.
Hey, thanks so much, Josh. I really appreciate it. You are a super smart dude, and we're going to talk about some of those things, and I love it. I'm glad I got a chuckle out of you. So before I share my screen, I want to have a little chat here, because a number of the things that Josh just talked about, those 5 factors, play into what I'm going to talk about. So just as another introduction here, MyAdvice is a full-service digital marketing firm specialized within the medical space, and we can service anyone in any medical specialty, but the vast majority of our clients are some sort of cash-based medicine or dental practice. So plastics, derms, med spas, functional wellness, regenerative health, those sorts of practice are really our bread and butter. And like Rachel said at the beginning, I've been doing this since 2018. The company's been around since 98. So we've been around a long time. We have about 2,500 clients throughout the US and Canada, and we're up to around 120, 140 employees last I heard. So we've done this a lot, and what it comes down to is you need to grow your practice. Like what Josh was talking about, the financial health and the continuity of revenue and growth within your practice is super critical to the ability to sell your practice, as well as just pay yourself. no matter what you end up doing with your practice. So that's what we're going to talk about. And what I like to break it down into is lead sources. So really, when you're a practice, there are two main lead sources that should be by far your largest lead sources that you're getting revenue from. Okay. It's word of mouth referrals and the internet. Okay. Things like billboards, radio ads, print advertising, that can all work and that can be great. But really, the foundation of your new inbound revenue should all come through word of mouth referrals and the internet. And the internet, that could take on a couple of different forms, right? That could be social media, that could be organic Google search, that could be ad based, right, on either social media or Google or another search engine. But really what we want to look at is how do you position yourself online to be advanced technologically, like Josh was talking about with your web presence, but also have a web presence that really drives profitability and revenue through high quality clients. Because that's the other thing that Josh mentioned is the loyalty and the stickiness of your clients and your patients really matters for your practice. And how you set up your web presence matters in regards to who you're attracting to your business. And I work with a number of consultants in the space that do trainings on like how to start up your practice and how to run consultations and these things. And one of the things they tell me is that a lot of their clients have this issue where they're getting leads online, but they're not high quality leads. They're people looking for deals. They're one-timers. They're the Groupon types, right? And what we're going to talk about today is how you set up your web presence to attract and retain those high quality individuals. All right, so let's come over here. This is MyAdvice's pyramid of success, which if you loved the food pyramid in third grade, you're really going to love this. Okay. We've seen pyramids our whole lives and it doesn't go away. This process and this idea of having a framework through which to build is really important. And we built this about 4 years ago because we realized that most practice owners were clinicians, right? And clinicians don't really have a good framework through which to understand the marketing process. So we built this to break it down into easily managed chunks. And this is the process we follow with all of our clients. And so what we see is that this pyramid, the reason it works is because it's proven to attract and retain what we call the high lifetime value clients over here, okay? So if you don't know this, and we've got a few different types here, but for a fully loaded medical spa in the United States, the average lifetime value of a single client is $57,000, okay? That's really what you're going for. That's why you're in this industry. Josh mentioned this, right? Like in this industry, the regulars are where you make your money. Like who cares about the $500 one-time Botox patient? Who cares about the random lip flip or the random lip fillers? That's fun and that's great. But if they don't turn into long-term clients and loyal clients, you're missing out on so much value. And it's entirely possible to lose money on certain clients in this industry with how much you have to spend to acquire new clients and how high your overhead is in medical aesthetics. Okay. So again, we're going for this number. And what's interesting, as we've seen over the last couple of years, that it's rare to see an aesthetics practice that's only doing aesthetics, because now they're all doing aesthetics plus weight loss, plus hormones, plus IV therapy, and all these wellness and functional medicine services. This number is actually fairly low based on what's currently happening in the industry. And I have clients that I talk to regularly. I had a client yesterday tell me that her top couple clients spend between $5,000 and $7,000 per year with her. Okay. That ends up being a lot larger number. But I want to come back to the pyramid here because, again, how do you position yourself to attract these lifetime value clients and do it in a way that is feasible for most practices? Because we're not all sitting on trust funds. We're not already all very successful practices, but it does cost money to do this in a way that actually works. And I want to point out a few things before we jump into the bottom of the pyramid. Paid search on this list, so this is like Google ads, Instagram ads, right, comes last. The reason it comes last is because of this idea of quality, okay? I talk to a lot of practitioners and practice owners who tell me, okay, let's run some ads. You know, hey, I want to grow, let's run ads, let's do it. And that's fine, that can work really well. But if you want to attract high quality individuals through your ads, you really need to have the foundation in place before you do that. Like, for example, I use the example of Google reviews a lot. If you're running ads and you have 5 Google reviews or 30 Google reviews and the next organic listing comes up below you with 300 Google reviews, guess what? You're not going to get that click, okay? And the people who do click on you aren't going to be very quality. So the order in which we do this matters a lot. Okay, so let's start at the bottom. Website. We need a website that's going to put your practice in a position to be highly successful. What I mean by that is it needs to accomplish two things. It needs to influence search engine behavior, and it needs to influence consumer behavior. Okay, so we need those people who do hear about you through word of mouth referrals or through Google to come to your website and be wrapped in a really warm, nice hug. We need them to feel like they know you before they walk into your practice. Just like Josh said, like, this is the coat of paint for your web presence. So like, I used to live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I live in Knoxville now. Nice little story here just for you guys. There was a doctor who had a practice in this building. I swear the roof was 8 feet over the ground. It was a very squat, small building. It was kind of dirty. It was by the railroad tracks. But that guy had the coolest website ever. Like, he had a great, great website, and that guy had a booming business because inside his practice, it was really nice, and his website was really, really great. So really, if he would have been in like a spacious, beautiful out exterior building, he would have done even better. But the point is, he was able to overcome some things, some limitations he had by having a really beautiful website that convinced people he was a high-end doctor and that they wanted to work with him. A couple other things with the website. The website needs to make you money, right? So you should have a shopping cart on your website. You need to have a photo gallery because in aesthetics, people need to know what the results look like, right? You need to be able to protect yourself from certain liabilities by having accessibility and different compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act present on your website so that you are protected. There's a number of these things that play into it, but at the end of the day, you need a website that's going to make you look good. And again, a website is an asset that can be transferred to a new owner. So if this is one less thing that any new entity has to do when they purchase your practice, that's a good thing. Okay. All right. Moving on the pyramid, I want to talk about local search optimization. So local search has to do with the way that Google decides where you show up on local searches. And by local searches, I mean near me searches, map searches. Real easy one to think about is go on Google Maps and search Botox and see who shows up, right? That's an incredibly valuable like search, right? And so what this is this positions you to start showing up on searches. And what we mean by this local power, local search optimization is what we do is we push out your information for your business to all the directory sites online. So like Google Maps is a directory site, Apple Maps is a directory, so is Yelp and Bing and MapQuest and Yellow Pages and all these places, right? So if you're not on all these places, number one, it makes it harder to find you. But number two, Google doesn't have a way to validate what you do and how authoritative you are. So what happens is when someone does that search, that Botox search on Google Maps, one of the things Google looks at is they look at every business and they say, okay, how many other directory sites can I use to validate that this business matches this search? And the less accurate or consistent your information is, or less present it is across all these different directory sites, the less Google will trust you. So what we do is we propagate that information out, your name, your address, your phone number, your services, your provider names, your hours, your website, like all this information out to over 65 different apps and directories so that Google can validate that information and push you higher up on these really valuable searches like the near me searches and the map searches. I like to show people this. This is a case study we ran where we took 200 new users for this service. We call it Local Power. We measured them at day 0 and day 60 and took some averages. And what we saw was an average increase of 23% on Google search and an 11% increase in phone calls. And there's no practice I've ever talked to that wouldn't be excited about 11% more phone calls in 60 days. Okay. I'm going to keep trucking through this. Okay, guys, bear with me here. All right, Google reviews. If you are not, as an aesthetic medical practice, if you are not getting a new Google review every single week, you are failing. Okay. I actually just looked, Josh, when you were telling us about reverse aesthetics, and looks like you guys got 2 in the last week. So good job. All right. Never go a week without getting a new Google review. Okay. That's the goal. And if you're sitting at like 5 Google reviews and you don't know what to do, you need to go hit up your friends and families and your neighbors and your cousins at the Thanksgiving dinner table, and everyone with a Google account can leave you a review. They don't need to lie and say that they saw you. They can just vouch for you in any way that is not inaccurate. Okay. Every practice out there is doing it. And again, Google reviews, when you sell your practice, that Google business profile is another transferable asset that the purchaser of your practice can take and keep with them, and they can keep those reviews. So those reviews are valuable, okay, to your web presence and to what Josh was talking about, the continuity of work and the continuity of revenue is really valuable, okay? And if you don't already do this, I would implement what we call a reputation management software. So like dentists have been doing it for 20 years, right? Where you leave and you get the email an hour later telling you to go leave them a review on Google with the link. Okay. There's a lot smarter ways to do that now via text, via email as well, sending them at preferred times when people are at different locations. Like there's a lot smarter ways to do this that we can help you with if you need help. But if you're not doing this, you need to implement a repeatable process so that every single client who is happy with you is asked, requested, and reminded to leave you a Google review. Okay. All right. Social media. Here's another one. Keep in mind, people, that social media, you really have two schools of thought with social media. You can either use it as a sales tool or you can use it as a retention tool. So Josh kind of talked about both. But the point is, if you want to use social media as a true sales tool, you need to have a very aggressive social media strategy. You need to be posting every day. You need to be posting reels. You need to be posting stories. You need to run it almost like an influencer account. Okay. And we can help with that if you guys need help. But a lot of practices, they're just not into that. That's just not who they are. And that's okay. You can still use social media as a very, very valuable and aggressive retention tool to stay top of mind with your clients and keep them coming back more and more often, remind them of what you do. If you add new services, inform them of that there. And it's a lot cheaper to do it that way anyway. But I just want to remind you guys that if you're not consistent on social media, it will hurt your web presence for a couple of reasons. Number one, Google will track how often you post on social media. And if you're not posting, they notice that, and it does hurt your search engine optimization in a small amount. The other part is you've got to realize that there are certain individuals out there in your market that they will validate you in different ways. So everyone that hears about you in any form, whether it's a word of mouth referral or a Google search or on social media, they will validate your information other ways. Okay. So think about this. So going to Google and looking at your reviews, that's a form of validation. Going and looking at your website and reading about what you do and who you are, that's a validation. Going to social media and seeing what your posting schedule looks like, what you post about, and what your personality looks like online is another validation. Okay. So that's why you need to be on all these different platforms, is because some people want to validate you in different places than others. Okay. So you need a way to be validated for people who need to check on you, whether or not they heard you through the internet or some other format, as well as you can use this as a sales tool and a retention tool. Okay. I like to pause after talking about social media because depending on where you're at and how aggressive you need to grow, 1 through 4 may be all you need. If you're in a small market, you're not in a big city, and really you're just in a place where you want to have a strong web presence that's going to maintain you and help you grow more organically, you may need to stop here, and that's okay. If you have more aggressive goals to grow, though, and to really improve the value of your business, like Josh was talking about, we need to talk about numbers 5 and 6. So number 5, we call website content strategy. This is what you would traditionally hear of as search engine optimization. Okay. So think about this as, your on website work. So a lot of these things we've talked about are making the website look pretty and do well and have the functionality we need. We've talked about doing directories and things outside of your website. We've talked about doing reviews, which is outside of your website, and social media, which is outside of your website. Now, this is where we can put a magnifying glass on your actual website and say, okay, how do we make Google love your website and bring people here for those procedures that make you the most money, right? How do we attract those high lifetime value clients using your website? So this is what, if you've ever heard things like keywords, blog writing, link building, title tags, meta descriptions, H1, H2, header tags, schema tagging, like that's what this is, okay? This is something that for most practices is going to be a need eventually if you plan to sell the business. And keep in mind that this is what we do to make sure that you never need to run ads to dramatically increase your inbound leads, okay? And with SEO, we're looking at it from a longer term perspective. In most large US cities, to make a big difference using SEO, it's going to take 6 to 9 months or more, depending on how aggressive of an SEO package you do. But this is a long-term strategy that you need to think about as a long-term strategy that can put you in a position to be successful 2, 3, 5 years down the road. Okay. Next up, paid search. So this is, again, your Google ads, your social media ads, all of these things. This is when you say, okay, Michael, I just bought an RF microneedling device and it's collecting dust in the corner of my room. It was $150,000. What now? Okay. Assuming the rest of your web presence is in a good position, this is where we normally start. We say, okay, we need to get some people in there right away. So we need to start doing some keyword ads where someone searches that, you pop up, right? And we're bidding a certain amount of money per each click that you get, right? So we need to make sure that your consultations and your phone skills are on point and everything, and your staff is really trained up to do well with those inbound leads. But we start there. We do display ads. We can do retargeting. We can do geo-targeting. It can be very, very sophisticated and a lot of things you don't really care to hear about or need to know. But the truth is, this is how we get some short and long-term results for high-end services. So a lot of these, like you see these ones right here in this little picture, are in Manhattan, right? We have a number of plastic surgeon clients in Manhattan, right? To be competitive there with surgeries, you need to run ads. You just have to, okay? But that can be for any med spa, any functional health practice in any market in the US, depending on your situation and how quickly you need to turn some zeros into some numbers, okay? And really that's what paid search is all about. So again, coming back to look at this, you need to view your web presence as one holistic piece, okay? Just like if you're a medical practitioner, you don't treat symptoms, we try to treat the whole body, right? We try to treat the person. That's what we're doing here, to put it in like medical terms. We want to make sure that your revenue is going up and to the right, like Josh said. We want to make sure that your new clients are going up and to the right. We want to make sure that you're retaining your clients. And we want to make sure that the clients you are attracting and bringing into your clinic are high quality spenders who aren't going to mess around with you, aren't going to hurt your practice or cost you money in the long run. But that's really my whole thing. So what I'm going to do, guys, I don't have a nice QR code prepared or anything, but I am going to put my Calendly link. There you go. Another chuckle out of Josh. My Calendly link in the chat. So if you do want to have a conversation about this, please reach out, schedule some time on my calendar. I'm happy to have a free consultation with anyone who wants it. And if I can help you, I'll let you know. If I can't, I'll tell you right away.
Thank you guys both. And in my follow-up emails with the recording links, I will also send both Josh and Michael's contact information and Calendly links and all the good stuff to schedule some time. So yeah, if there's any questions, don't be shy. Please send them over. We have one or two right now that we'll ask. This, I think it's for Michael. If I'm thinking about selling, should I still be worrying about redesigning my website?
I think that comes down to the time frame of when you think you're selling. If you're well into your due diligence period, and maybe I'll ask Josh this too. I don't know that I would worry about it if you're into that, because you don't want to be spending money in certain places if you're already well into that process. But if you're at least a year away, yeah, you should be worried about redesigning your website for sure.
Yeah,
Depending on what it looks like right now.
yeah. So that was what I was going to add. It really, from my perspective, it really depends upon what it looks like. If you have one of those websites that hasn't been redeveloped in the last 10 years and it was done on some old format and it's not been optimized or anything else, from a buyer's perspective, the first thing they're going to do when they receive information from us about you is look at your website. And their initial perception of, much like a client, their initial perception of your business and your office is going to be based around what that website looks like. So do you need a full, remodel of the website? I don't know that that's necessary, but can it be touched up, cleaned up, modernized a little bit, photography updated, things like that? Yeah, and I think there's probably an area in between that fits well.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then let's see. Why hire Tusk, Josh, over maybe some of the others out there, or even doing it yourself?
Sure. I touched on this just a little bit, but I'll expand on it just a little bit. So Tusk in particular, and we've done over $1 billion in healthcare transactions. We work with all of the private equity groups that are already present in the space and all of the larger groups that are already present in the space. So we're very well versed in provider-based businesses. So I think that we have a long history of taking very good care of clients and optimizing value, but even more importantly, finding the right fit for the seller and the business. So I think that's a critical component of it. As far as versus unrepresented and represented, they're in a traditional doctor transaction, you probably could have gotten away with that because it's a very similar language, it's a very similar skill set, it's a very similar knowledge base. And when you're looking at, and in that kind of a situation, you're very likely going to take a relatively significant discount versus what a private equity group would pay for your business. So in exchange for the much higher valuation you'll get from a private equity group, the language is different. The financial requirements are different. All of the requirements to go through the closing process are much more rigorous. And this isn't to speak poorly of any private equity backed group, but they're looking at this as an investment that they ultimately would like to turn and make money off of. So the lower that they can pay for that investment, or the less they can pay for that investment, the more they make when they ultimately sell it off at a higher price point later on. So you need to have an advocate in the process. And just to give you a little bit of background, we look at unsolicited offers on a regular basis. These are offers that come directly from sellers without any representation. And on average, we outperform an unsolicited offer by roughly 30% from a valuation standpoint, net of fees. So we have no problem paying for ourselves and paying for the value that we bring to the table. So ultimately, this is your life's work. This is your business. This is likely an asset that you're utilizing to retire off of. And it's critically important that you don't make a misstep.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Plus,
Right.
look how handsome Josh is. No one else is going to bring that to the table.
There you go. All right, I think those are the only two that have come in today so far. So with that, just thank you both, Josh and Michael, so much for your expertise and insights today. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did here too. Again, you'll be hearing an email from me with the recording and links and all the good stuff. And you can always reach out to me if you don't get it or you need to reach out to them separately, whatever. I will get you in touch with whoever you need. So thank you all very much for your time, and we look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Josh.